That's
Let somebody shooting at it.
Roxanne? This is with her stuff.
Oh, I just left those for you guys to refer to because all the people's comments were in those minutes.
Oh, okay. Okay. I already signed on.
Okay, we're ready?
We're ready? I'd like to call this public hearing to order. Roxanne, would you read the call of the public hearing?
The Ledyard Town Council will conduct a public hearing at 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, October 9, 2019, in the council chambers, Town Hall Annex, 741 Colonel Ledyard Highway, Ledyard, Connecticut, to receive comment on the proposed amendments to ordinance number 300-012, formerly 130, an ordinance concerning blight and public nuisance for the town of Ledyard. At this hearing, interested persons may appear and be heard, and written communications will be accepted. Dated at Ledyard, Connecticut, this 26th day of September 2019. For the Ledyard Town Council, Linda C. Davis, Chairman. Published in the New London Day on September 30, 2019.
Thank you. Kevin, would you just give a brief update on what's changed?
Well, the ordinance overall has changed greatly. What we did was we took what was the old ordinance, and then we took, based upon discussion we had with the town attorney, they went and took the Groton ordinance, which has been bulletproof and has been used several times, and it's been tried and true and has passed through the courts. So we took that ordinance, modified it to be Ledyard's ordinance, took some of the existing language we had in ours that we felt needed to remain, and basically copied that into this single ordinance. None of the requirements really have changed as far as what we define it, or what blight is and things like that. It's just that this has better, it works better to sort of serve the court if we have to go to that level from that standpoint. But overall, it's basically a complete rewrite with some of our old language added in just to keep it consistent with what we wanted it to be.
And back in the day when we wrote this, Kevin, you were around, Bill, we were probably the committee, and there wasn't a lot of ordinance to look at. I don't think Groton had theirs at the time.
No, they did not. I think at the time that this one was put, the only one that had one was Norwich.
Yeah.
So we did pretty good. It stood the...
Didn't Monfilm?
They
were
debating
ours.
one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They were debating ours, and I think they mirrored ours eventually.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we did good for a bunch of rookies.
Pioneers.
Are there any public comments at this time? Yes, Mr. Rodolico.
Just so I didn't come here for nothing. John Rodolico, 40 Long Pond Road, Ledyard. Two issues. You want me to speak into the mic?
Yeah, I had a citizen that said that they could not hear very well out of this specific microphone, and I know that you would be standing here today, so I wanted to make sure he could hear you.
Okay.
He can hear you. Now he can.
Okay, but two issues on this I'd like to address. One is reporting, and the other is enforcement. The issue of reporting, and I've had some experience with this because, you know, I will admit publicly, assuming nobody's listening, that I have put in several of these complaints and about them. And I have a little bit of a problem with that. I really struggle with that, especially if they're in your vicinity or in your neighborhood, you know, that now you have to identify yourself, and again, it's public record. And it seems to me that you should be able to notify the town of a particular, especially a blatant violation of blight. I don't mean a violation where someone's actively doing something they shouldn't do, but where a property is clearly blighted. And there's one in particular that I know of, and it's clearly blighted. You know, you talk about collapsing roofs, you talk about missing windows, can't be used for its normal use. And you know, you should be able to notify the town that, hey, you should go out and look at it. And the ordinance seems to say it gives two means of reporting. One is where the blight official finds something, you know, it's kind of self-reporting, or not self-reporting, where the town itself, through its agent, finds a property that's blighted. And the other is where someone would file a report. And so I understand the town staff is busy, but it seems to me that there should be a mechanism where where they are clearly blighted, that action is taken against those. The second issue about enforcement, and I will say that I've had some experience in my prior life. I had some experience with this blight ordinance, and I felt it worked very effectively. I know of at least 3 properties that were handled through this. One was a tough nut, and it had to go through the system, and it had to go through the whole process with the blight review board, the blight officer, if that's what they're called, and the whole thing. And it was a persistent problem. I don't know, it kind of carried over after my time, so I don't know if it was still a problem. But I know that in that case, action was taken through the ordinance and through the enforcement, and the town actually collected money, real money, because it wasn't fixed. I know of other cases, 2 other cases, where the owners were notified and took care of the problem. One was a safety issue with a chimney, and another one was just where the property was it was clearly blight, it was clearly an eyesore, and it was reported, and usually, sometimes the problem is finding the owner, as it is with taxes and things like that. But I bring that up in terms of, enforcement in an ordinance, and this is just maybe for future, if you have another ordinance that may come up about the enforcement issue. But enforcement does work, and it can be effective in doing, because if not, without that particular part of an ordinance, and again, this is a good example of something that does work, and Mayor Allen could probably give you his experiences with more recent cases of blight and how it's working. But it does work, and it is effective. It doesn't have to necessarily be totally punitive, but again, just putting something in there, putting something in an ordinance that's defined and that gives, for both sides, it gives an appeal process, which this ordinance does. Cease and desist can be ordered like it is for probably many other things in the town. And then there's a time period, and then there's a review, and then potentially there's a fine. And that would hold up, and it would certainly beat the cost of going to court and trying to, make new law. So again, this is a good ordinance. I think it's worked pretty effectively, at least for mine. But again, I think there should be a mechanism where an individual can notify someone of what I'll call blatant or obvious blight, according to the definition there, and the town would then act on that, as opposed to an individual having to be the kind of the person who tattles on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Hearing none, I will close this public hearing. Okay, now we have 15 minutes.
Oh, and it's 6:59.
Yeah, and it's only 6:59,
That's all right.
but I figured we'd be ready to
I
jump
know.
at 7 o'clock.
You want the public to sit and listening to us?
For like 10 seconds.
What did you say?
Well, that last minute always takes forever.
Yep, I guess so.
You do? Mine? Oh, there we go. I'd like to call this meeting of the Ledyard Town Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski? Here. Mrs. Ingles? Here. Mr. Malone?
Here.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Mrs. McGrattan? Here. Mr. Sebelia?
Here.
Mr. Soms?
Here.
Mr. Washington?
Here.
9 here, 0 absent.
Motion carries. We have no presentations or informational items. I do not see any members of the public, or commission or boards. We'll move right on to comments of town councilors. I'll start on my left. Yes.
Okay, Our Lady of Lourdes is hosting, but it's a presentation is being put on by the Ledyard Prevention Coalition, and it has to do with your mental health first aid training, and it's for people who deal with adolescents who are experiencing mental health or addiction challenge or who are in crisis. The course reviews typical adolescent development and teaches a 5-step action plan for how to help young people in both crisis and non-crisis. And it is on October the 21st and 22nd from 5 to 9 at Our Lady of Lourdes. The Know Your Town series is halfway over, and I was hoping we would have more attendees, but a good number of people came. And I'm just surprised at the number of people who came who have lived in town for many years. It would seem by this time they would know a lot of this, but they're kind of enjoying things that they never maybe had time to come to and to learn about. So anyway, that's all.
Anyone on my right? Yes, Tom.
A little PSA here. This is just the time of year when there's a lot of wildlife out, particularly deer, turkeys, turkey vultures, various different forms of wildlife that are just on people's lawns, or in this particular case where I live, on the road. Just be careful because, with the foliage, you really can't see them because they adapt to the environment well as far as like their camouflage. So just be careful. I've had a couple of near misses with pack of turkeys lately, and they're pretty stubborn, and I don't want to have to put an insurance claim. So just be on the lookout.
Anyone else on my right? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve minutes of the public hearing and the regular meeting minutes of September 25th.
So moved. Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any corrections, additions? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Ingles?
Yes.
Mr. Malone?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Communications in the portal, referrals. Speaking of the portal, I call it the portal, but does everybody like the way it looks? I
No.
think it's, you don't?
No.
Why not?
Yes.
Well, I shouldn't jump to conclusion. I'm not used to it. I'm not comfortable with it yet. Not used to it yet. I like the old one. I could find things. This one's, I'm still hunting for things.
Okay,
on this
that's called change.
one. Yeah.
Change is hard.
I just think it's so much cleaner and nice to look at,
It's easy to go through stuff.
and really much easier on a mobile
looks
device
different
as
than
well.
yours.
Much easier on a mobile device.
You open up
Easier on the
yeah.
eye.
It just, I don't know, it just pops up.
Yeah, it's nice. Okay, but anyway,
Still gotta get
where
to-
was I? I lost, oh, no,
I'm struggling too, John.
no, we're all
doing
struggling,
minutes,
but
but
We
it-
talked
yeah,
about
it's
change. I've had
changed.
3
Yeah,
jobs
it's
in high
changed.
school. 2 addresses. So I'm not the one to talk to about change.
Well, I've only had one job since I...
okay. Anyway, there were no referrals. Council Subcommittee Liaison Reports, Admin.
Admin met, had a joint workshop session tonight with land use to tweak the STR ordinance after the public hearing. We're closing in on something. We're closing in on it, folks.
Circling it.
And the regular admin meeting tonight was overrun by the work session, but there are a series of appointments on the consent calendar. And they're all reappointments except for one. That's my report.
Any questions for Admin? Finance.
Finance met last Wednesday, and we had a special meeting last night. Everything is on tonight's agenda that we worked on.
Any questions for Finance? Land use?
Land use met this past Monday. We discussed the dog leash ordinance with the ACO. We're getting close to pushing that one to admin. We removed the language on the dog waste because the ACO's feeling on that was it's already covered by state statute, so we don't have to reiterate that through the ordinance. But she had one question she wanted to confirm with the state as far as being able to issue the fine through the enabling statute. So, but other than that, we're getting close to finishing up on that one. And on the alcohol on town property ordinance, we finished through with that. We had one comment that we would send to the mayor just to verify that the $1 million insurance is sufficient for that type of activity. I know that's a standard that we've used in most of our ordinances, but since this is with alcohol, we just sort of verify that that is the correct amount. Other than that, we did pass it to go move to admin. That is my report.
Thank you. Any questions for land use?
Just a really quick thing that we're expecting an answer from Kerma on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week because the agent that is responsible for Ledyard is out of town right now. But we'll have one quick.
And like that information will go to admin. Perfect. We've already moved the ordinance.
And for all the subcommittee chairs, you will need to write your transition. I think all of you have already done one, the transition memo.
Land use is completed there.
Oh, wow, overachiever. So you two folks will have to do that.
We're not going to have anything, right?
Right, right. There will be
No
nothing.
unfinished business.
There will be no unfinished business.
Okay. Liaison reports, start on my left. John?
The building committee had a special meeting last week, and it was all bad news, basically. And I hate to report it, but it was not good. The punch list on both the schools is extensive. Some of these items are legitimate punch items. Some are just lack of supervision on the contractor's part. I'm not going to read them all because there's 2 pages worth. The ones I wrote down is 2 pages worth. I'll just touch on a few. The air conditioning's not working properly in some parts of the building. They adjusted the start times. The teachers were coming in and the building was too warm, so they moved the start time back a little bit. That seemed to fix that problem. Some heaters are missing covers. There's a problem with the stair treads a while back, but the edge is breaking off. And instead of replacing all the treads, because it was a bad lot, they only replaced the ones that were broken. And now the ones they didn't replace are breaking. So now we have to replace, they need to replace the whole set of treads or come up with something different because this one's not working. There's a sprinkler in the vestibule in the middle school that's installed in an unheated space. We talked about this back when they put it in and it didn't get resolved back then. Hopefully it's not an issue this coming winter. What else? Just hang with me here. Just to hit the big ones. There's paint peeling in a lot of places in Gallup Hill. Actually, I think in both schools have paint peeling. And that's a preparatory thing. You can spend a day and a half, 2 days prepping a room and only a couple hours painting it. It's all in the prep work. And it just wasn't done properly. If they had spent the time and energy to prep it properly, and if it was being supervised, this problem would have been caught. Now it's going to be an issue to repaint hallways and classrooms that are peeling. I said a lot of this is it's just lack of supervision. There's still flooring issues in the gym. The beams in the gym up in middle school they're rusting. We have doors aren't closing properly. They're sitting crooked. The list goes on and on. Again, is in my opinion, I've been on both sides of the contract, and this is just lack of supervision, most of this. And that's my report.
Any questions on that?
Are they addressing the punch list?
Yes. In some cases, they suggested we'll need to bring in another contractor, so who's that going to be? And O&G said we're going to bring in our own people to address some of these issues. And we're holding back some money, obviously. That's one of the orders you have at this point.
Sean, that would just be oversight, right?
Yeah. Or lack of.
Well, that's how we got here.
Yeah.
But, so, I mean, just the whole prep thing just sounds like a very fundamental mistake.
We had an owner's rep, and then he had to leave for personal reasons, so we never refilled the position.
I got you, okay.
That might have taken care of some of this, but as a superintendent or a foreman, it's your job to make sure this doesn't happen.
Right. That's why you're there.
I've been on jobs a lot bigger than this one, with a lot smaller list.
It's a QC issue, not a QA
Yeah.
issue. Quality control versus
Right,
quality
yeah,
assurance.
most of these issues are
Quality control.
quality control.
Which is definitely related to the people doing the actual work. Even the superintendent could have been there watching the work and.
Well, he's trying to cover 2 schools. We had 2, and now we got 1. He's
Yeah.
trying to cover both.
That's-
But he needs to convey to his next level down that this is not acceptable.
So,
Right.
That we shouldn't be here right now.
regardless of whether it was 1, whether it was 2. they're
We paid for it.
required- We paid for it.
Yep.
We're holding back the funds.
Yep.
They're addressing the funds list. We need to ensure that they correct these in a timely manner.
Anything else? Okay. Other liaison, yes.
Housing Authority met on Monday, and I'm happy to report, it's just great down there. With the maintenance man and the new maintenance man and the new executive director, things are just humming along, and all the tenants seem to be very happy. They made their pilot program, pilot payment this year of $9,391, and they are beginning the process of rent stratification, which means they're going to try to raise the base rent on most of the units. It will absolutely not affect anybody who's living there. This process takes a couple of months, so it will not really go into effect until probably early next year. So anybody that comes in after that will start at the base rent and then on up. So they will hopefully begin to recoup some of the money that they should have been getting all along. Anyway, things are good.
Good. Any other liaisons on this side? No? Just beautification. I started to report on this last meeting, I believe, but they did raise, the beautification committee ended up raising enough funds that they're going to plant 3,000 bulbs. So the suggestion now is if you live in a neighborhood where there is like a little place you could plant some yellow flowers or some daffodils, to add to the yellow, we'll go ahead and do that. Add them in your own yard if you wish. But it should be nice and yellow come spring. And I know that Mayor Allen's yard is going to have a lot with his digging.
With the digger.
That diggy thing?
Sorry, Mayor. Are there any?
Spent a lot of time on that digger thing.
Good timing. Report of the mayor.
All right, so my wife chose to get 650 tulip bulbs, so that's my little project right now. And I will just say that where she said, oh, we want to plant them here, my grandfather started writing a book, and before he passed, it was titled The Devil's Rock Garden. And there is a very good reason for that. So that's why I was on the digger thing. On to better news, though, I will tell you that Ledyard Center School is officially sold. We have cash in hand. It is done. So the parcel's been subdivided. It took some effort. It took some work on the easement in terms of making sure that we had sufficient access down the southern driveway of LCS for not just vehicles and people, but also utility runs. So we got all that ironed out, and we were able to close, and the buyer's actually coming to town next week with his team to start working on presenting a plan for planning and zoning, which is fantastic. On October 7th, we had a meeting with SQA, Senator Austin, both our state representatives and DPH regarding the most recent SQA issue. And the reason that we had, it was a very long meeting, almost 2 hours. But the reason for the meeting is, my feeling was that anytime we had a situation like that, we have to sit down and say, what went wrong? What do we do to make it right in the future? And how can you, SQA, deliver better to your consumers? They're working on a number of things. We ended up doing an Everbridge call. We did a number of things. The Department of Public Health stepped in and brought 384 cases of water for the customers. It's a job that really should have been picked up by SQA, but they kind of dropped the ball, so the state jumped in, and the governor and his team saw it on the news the following morning and saw that people were without drinking water, and he was not a happy person. So DPH came down. We had a a lengthy conversation, and I think we are going to be seeing some changes there. I had a meeting with Eversource. Councilor Solms attended with me. This was regarding 1087 Colonel Ledyard Highway, the former strawberry field, I believe it is. What we're trying to better understand is that Eversource has a 175-foot wide easement that traverses that parcel, 43-acre parcel, and we're trying to better understand what can and can we not do on that piece. So I think we actually made really good headway, and whether the Ledyard Fair chooses to pursue that or not, we have a sense of what we could do in the future too, and there may be another proposal forthcoming on that. I will keep you posted. Also had another EEE conference call yesterday, actually. It was a lengthy call with all the towns that have infected mosquitoes. I shared the PowerPoint presentation with everybody today on that. It was actually very, very interesting to see. They did both West Nile at the beginning of the presentation and EEE at the end. And you can see, if you look at the PowerPoint, how West Nile seems to be really focused on Fairfield County and down towards the city. EEE is very much eastern Connecticut, far eastern Connecticut. West Nile does not have the same deadly capabilities that EEE has, but very interesting stuff. The really great news is that we're on the real downhill side of it. I think the population of mosquitoes that are being trapped now that are infected are 10% of what they were in mid-August. So it's gone down dramatically, hopefully with the temperature and trapping. But another interesting tidbit that I would share with you is they communicated with Massachusetts, who has been aerially spraying for mosquitoes since 2003. And they have no data from their trapping that suggests that the spraying has done anything to reduce the mosquito populations. So, people have brought up aerial spraying multiple times, but I would say since 2003, that's a good long sample data set to understand what it is or is not doing, and it doesn't really appear to be doing anything productive. The other interesting tidbit that we got out of it too is that the worst year for EEE was actually 1938. And we had 35 cases, 25 of them which ended in deaths. So EEE is not a new thing. I kind of mistakenly thought that this was something more recent, but obviously since it's been around since 1938, it's not so recent. Mike Preble has retired from the Department of Public Works. So this was something that we have worked towards getting a resolution on, and we have arrived there. It was official on October 2nd, and we have actually hired one of our prior Public Works people left the job and has now come back. So we've hired somebody back that had experience and was actually had really great positive feedback on during winter storms. He plowed on Long Cove Road down where John lives and had some really good favorable responses, so we're happy to have him back with us. We also hired an assistant tax collector. Both our assistant tax collector and our tax collector, who have been lifelong friends, are very likely retiring together, and we are losing all the knowledge that comes with those two individuals. So we have hired a Gales Ferry resident to start there, to train her up, because the assistant may retire as early as November 1st. So we're giving her some time. They're only required by contract to give us 2 weeks notice. And that's, I think, something that we might want to consider in terms of jobs that have some pretty substantial knowledge base associated with them, whether 2 weeks is reasonable or not, or whether it something that we could look to extend. I don't know, but it's worth exploring because we're going to lose both pretty quickly there. Also met with the Ledyard Housing Authority on Tuesday, and I would echo what Councilor McGrattan said. Colleen is doing a fantastic job down there. Things are progressing well. She had asked me a number of questions about what things the town of Ledyard Public Works could or could not do. things like that. But what I was really pleased to see is that their new maintenance man, Steve Shuttleworth, had a unit that I believe was occupied for about 10 years, and he has to put up, I believe it's 2 smoke detectors and a couple light bulbs, and then wax the floors. And he's only on the 3rd day of the 3rd week right now in terms of totally renovating the unit. So that's kind of in stark comparison to some of the most prior one that took 3 or 4 months to finish a unit. So it's important in terms of when they have a waiting list like they have to be able to get these units turned and released. So I was really happy to see that. And I was out of town last week, so thankfully there were no tornadoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, snowstorms, blizzards, ice storms, or anything else. So that's all I have for you.
Thank you.
I did sign the easement, though.
Yes.
So I feel like I was part of that.
You were absolutely part of a very important transaction.
Any questions for the mayor? Okay, we have no old business. Would anybody like to amend the agenda under new business? Hearing none. Would anybody like to remove anything from the consent calendar? Somebody like to move the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Malone?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Admin.
Oh, sorry, we have, mine is different than yours. Okay, sorry. I move that we amend a resolution establishing a Ledyard Farmers Market Committee as contained in the draft dated September 30th, 2019. Well, actually, protocol, this did not go through admin. We canceled the meeting tonight, and admin has not voted on this.
Right.
It is a minor change, but admin has not voted on it.
We increased the, by recommendation of the Farmers Market Committee, if I may.
Yeah.
We did ask that they increase the makeup of the committee from 7 to 9 members because of the volume of work. And while we were opening it up to change the resolution, we added some of the language, the standard language. If you miss X amount of meetings, you're all automatically considered to have resigned. So that was added as well. I think that was about it.
You wouldn't consider making it an ordinance? That's what I thought before, changing from resolution to ordinance like we have done with other. Oh, okay.
No, we could at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought it was about.
Oh, okay, no, this was just to go from 7 to 9.
Oh, okay,
So-
okay. All right.
Any questions?
Second.
Told you they were out.
Second.
Wildlife.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles?
Yes.
Mr. Malone?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
I move that we appoint Ms. Cynthia McLean, R. 20 Norman Drive, Gales Ferry, to the Senior Citizens Commission for a 2-year term ending December 9th, 2020, to fill a vacancy left by Ms. Labatt.
Second.
She's been attending meetings, I understand,
She
already.
was last meeting, yeah.
So that's always good to hear.
Yeah.
Long-time resident of town.
Yes.
Very long-time resident. So.
Yes.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles?
Yes.
Mr. Malone?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
She and Mike came to a number of, your
Yes.
town meetings.
Yes, they have been, yes. Okay, next item, finance.
I move that we set a public hearing date to be held on October 23rd, 2019 in the council chambers, Annex Building, 741 Colonel Ledyard Highway, to receive comments and recommendations regarding proposed amendments to ordinance number 200-005, formerly number 108, an ordinance to provide property tax relief for certain homeowners age 65 or over or permanently and totally disabled.
Second.
And this is just to set the public hearing.
So this is the second hearing because we've since acted on the recommendations we got from the first hearing.
I think it might be the third public hearing.
Yeah, actually it is.
Yeah.
Second one in recent memory.
We've let this go a few times.
Yep.
We're going to get this one right. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles?
Yes.
Mr. Malone?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
I move that the council approve a tax collector salary adjustment increase of 6% as reflected in the attached salary schedule, and if the current tax collector remains in the position of tax collector of the town through January 31st, 2020, provide a one-time retroactive payout to July 1, 2019.
Second.
So, as the mayor reported, our tax collector and the assistant tax collector are both retiring at the same time. We've hired an assistant tax collector, but if the current tax collector and the former, or the actual existing assistant retire as planned, we will be going through our new tax collections on January 1st with 2 new people. So in looking at salaries in the area to hire a replacement for the tax collector who's retiring, we did some salary, the mayor's office did some salary comparisons, and we have realized that we are below what the area towns comparable to Ledyard with the same number of hours and the same workload in terms of population are paying. And according to the salary study that they did, we're about 6% low. So number one, we want to adjust the salary so that we can attract a new tax collector in a timely manner. And secondly, it would be to the town's advantage if we had the experience of the existing tax collector to carry us through with the new tax collector through the next tax collection season. And the most important thing about this is we have a very high tax collection rate, and we want to keep that going because it represents a lot of money.
Any questions for finance?
It sounds like, and I understand what you're doing, and I agree with it. So it's a two-parter. It's one is to correct for past salary issues, and the other one is kind of succession planning.
Correct. Correct.
So we're on the good side of this
Yes.
in a year from now, so there's a little bit of a benefit to hang around.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not a year from now.
Yeah, this is just to stay.
Yeah, so she'll be
Is it
retired probably by
incentive
December
for her to
31st or January 31st.
Yeah.
So we need somebody, like, we need to hire soon.
No, but I'm saying that, but on the salary side, I thought the increase in the salary was going to take place was going to be, if the person hangs around becomes retroactive.
Yeah, so
Oh,
what you're
yes.
calling succession planning is
Yes.
to...
Yes.
So it's retro July 1 to January 31, assuming she stays.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
And if I might,
Yes.
we felt like it was critically important to make an adjustment because we're losing both in this case at once, we need somebody with experience.
Right.
When we put out the call for the assistant tax collector, we've got 3 total people, none with experience, and the one that we did hire has banking experience from Navy Fed, which is great. But we didn't no tax collecting experience. So we really need to hire somebody that has tax collecting experience because we're not comfortable with a learning curve coming out of the gates with 2 brand new people.
Question, is 6% enough to attract?
We
a
hope
great
so.
candidate?
We hope so. I mean, when we're going to put it out,
Yeah.
we don't have any applications
Okay.
yet, so
I just,
Yeah.
in my experience with business, it's tough.
yeah.
So we looked at this as close as we could come to the same job in other towns.
Yeah.
So we looked at comparable towns, and we're 6% behind them.
Okay,
So that's why 6%.
levels the
And
field.
the spreadsheet that the finance director put together, which is an attachment in the file, if you look, you'll see where it's broken down by towns, and you'll see some very very comparable towns, Stonington, Colchester, Montville, Plainfield, towns that are fairly comparable to us in size and in grand list. And so that's how we kind of arrived there.
Any further? Yes, Tom.
So, there's a couple of things here that hasn't been mentioned that really are important to us. The tax collection rate of, I think we're at 99.1 or 99.3%.
99.1.
Which is extremely high, which really affects our ability to go out and borrow money, right? Our tax collection rate affects our credit rating. So, we don't want to put that at risk, since we get some attractive credit ratings every time we go out to bond or borrow. So, this is why it's important to attract somebody with experience, as the mayor said. And the other thing is, this job has a certification that goes with it. We're looking for some experience. We can't, I don't want to say we can't, but it would be very unfortunate for us as a town if our tax collection rate dropped even to 98.5. I think that equates to about $700,000 a year. So, as it refers to our ability to function as a town financially, our financial well-being, our bond rating, and so on, I really think it's important that we attract someone who has both experience and the proper certifications and can hit the deck running, like the mayor alluded to. In lieu of someone that's going to take 6 months to learn it up, and then, that's 6 months we could lose a significant amount of revenue. So that's why it's important. I think that if, we could offer more to be a competitive rate, we would. But at this point in time, I don't think it's really equitable for anybody to offer more than the 6%.
Will Joan hang around until you get somebody who's up to snuff?
Well, we don't know. I mean, this was a carrot to see if she would stay. She has a reason that she would like to go, but we're trying to get her to stay, at least understanding that January is the second busiest time. July is the busiest. That's the full year tax payment. January is the second busiest. But what we're hoping is that if Joan were to stay, at least through then, the new hire would be in place for the billing process and then the collection process as well. So we're working on Joan daily to try to get her to stay long enough.
Have you advertised for?
Yes, it's actually advertised right now, and we don't have applications, but we're
hoping.
Yeah, and that's not a great strategy, but hope is not a strategy at all. The only other thing I would add to that, if you would, is that our mill rate calculation is actually based on the collection rate, too. So the mill rate could increase if, let's say we had a tax collector that's at 97%, the mill rate is actually going to increase based on the true collection rate. So we like that 99.1 a lot.
Any further questions? Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles?
Yes.
Mr. Malone?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries, and there is no further business. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion's made and seconded.
Yeah.
Wow. We like those.